Boop, 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 boop. Oh, woo. There you go. Dancing too. Here she comes. Woo.
Good morning. Good morning, Timothy.
Good
Good morning,
morning.
Hiroko-san in Clubhouse. Good morning to everybody who is watching us on YouTube, LinkedIn, and probably Facebook as well. We are here once again on this is already December 1st,
December.
2024, with Timothy Langley, the CEO of Langley Esquire, the government affairs and public relations agency in downtown Tokyo, reporting for the 199th time. Yes, about Japanese politics and what is going on here. So, Timothy, thanks a lot for being here every Sunday for 199 times. I think that everybody, already appreciates this achievement, and I appreciate it too. And I know that you have been taking people with you everywhere you go. So thank you for doing that as well. It's always a pleasure to have a look at the background you have. And today you are reporting from, is that Katsuyama?
This is Katsuyama on the
Yeah.
Chiba Peninsula.
Right. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm not going to keep anybody waiting. Let's see what you're going to tell us today before I give another big thank you to our
Great.
sponsor. Yes.
Thank you very much, Maya, and good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining this briefing. As Maya said, it's the 199th. That's pretty significant. I mean, every episode, it's amazing that we actually show up on a Sunday morning at 8:20. Sometimes it's not so easy. Today is one of those. It's just a little bit cold. I'm a little bit exposed to the elements, but look at how beautiful the sky is. Mount Fuji is right behind me. You can't really tell because of the video, but as the sun comes up, maybe she will become a little bit more apparent, but she's right there screaming at us. We always start the briefing with a talk about where the yen is, how much yen it is to each dollar. It's a bit of a thermometer read if you follow it closely enough, as we do. And the yen closed out this week at 149.76 dollars to the yen. And this is a significant number because it's the strongest the yen has been in 6 weeks. If you've been following the program, last week it was 154, then it was 154 the week before and 152, and now it's jumped down to 149. I think it's probably because the United States was on Thanksgiving break, but also because a lot of other things are going on. Higher than expected inflation experienced by the big city of Tokyo in fresh foods, in energy costs, that sort of thing. And so there's this relationship between the yen and the amount of the value of the stock market going back and forth. So it's something to continue to watch, and it is a barometer on what's going on with the current prime minister and what's going on in his life. The Diet opened on Thursday. The prime minister spoke to the assembled both houses on Friday, talking about his policy. And there's a lot going on Monday and Tuesday, and then later in the week. There is a stimulus package that we've been talking about for 3 weeks or so. The floor is 1.03 million salary per year is tax-free. And Mr. Tamaki of the Democratic Party for the People wants to raise that floor up to maybe 1.7 million. This is a commitment that he made to winning the massive win that he had in the last election. And he's really pushing this, and it's causing a little bit of discomfort. He has not joined the coalition as a party member or as a coalition party. He's playing both sides, and that has its own complications. But we'll get into each of those a little bit more deeply as the briefing goes. But let me pass it back to you, Maya, to talk about our wonderful sponsor.
Thank you very much for this, Timothy. Well, a brief thank you and a big one, even though it is a brief one, to Kanchu, that is Kanagawa Chuo Jutaku, or as they call themselves nowadays, Kanchu. You can find them at kanchu.com. They offer bilingual services to individuals who want to buy and sell real estate in Tokyo and Yokohama. The company also does property management and investment property. And if you want to work with them, please contact James Howell. You can find him on LinkedIn or at james@kanachu.com. So please think about them and consider your next when you consider your next project. Thank you, Timothy. Now it's the deep dive, I believe.
Thank you very much, Maya. And good morning, everybody, once again. So the parliament opened on Thursday. The emperor crossed the moat and came into the Diet. Both houses of the Diet assembled. He was there in all of his regal splendor and opened the Diet as he's constitutionally required to do. Every Diet session is opened and closed by the emperor. So his permission is requested and must be granted to do that sort of thing. He is the head of state, so this is one of his responsibilities. But this the prime minister took the opportunity on Friday to address both houses of the Diet, and that went on for some time, where Mr. Ishiba talked about his policy prerogatives, what he intends to do. He's described the kind of delicate situation that he has as a leader of a minority government. The LDP does not hold sway. It doesn't hold more than 50% of the Diet seats in the lower house. Even in a coalition with Komeito, its coalition partner, it needs more to pass bills to get the machinery of government going. And he's talked about how he's going to blend the imperatives of government between the LDP and Komeito, that part of the coalition, and the opposition parties, being very nice, being very kind, talking about how much he's going to accommodate their issues too, as he must. I think the policy speech did not come across as very forceful, but given his situation, I mean, he's in a delicate position. Mathematically, the opposition parties could all gang up on him and kick him out and put somebody else in power, another party, or force the LDP to put in another or a different prime minister. That is not quite in the tea leaves yet, but there are indications that there are going to be some real challenges ahead, particularly later next week, Thursday and Friday. And let me describe to you why later. But let's talk about what the prime minister did talk about. First and foremost, in his speech, he talked about defense and security issues. So it's important that sequentially, talking about those first, it's a little bit of maybe he wanted to have an opportunity about how well he did when he was in Peru and in Rio de Janeiro, and who he met. And it was significant. He did meet with the Chinese premier. He met with the president of South Korea. He met with the president of the United States. So he was front and center, and he reported to the Diet about that. He talked about this ceiling of 1.03 million yen per year as a salary for being tax-free, and the pressure being put upon him and the LDP and the coalition to raise that level. It does make a certain amount of sense. It's been 20 years since that ceiling or that floor was established, and a lot has happened in those 20 years. It should have been addressed before, but it's just been kind of one of those delicate issues that nobody's touched. Mr. Tamaki has put that in his policy, in his manifesto, that the Democratic Party for the People, supports you, the people who are earning the least amount of money and being at that kind of poverty level. I'm going to raise that up for you, so vote for me. And he increased the number of seats he had fourfold. I mean, the Constitutional Democratic Party increased their number of seats by about 50%, but fourfold increase for some of the things he was talking about in primarily terms, the raising that level of tax-free salary. Who knows what is going to happen, but he is really sticking to his guns and making things uncomfortable, not only for the LDP, but also for the Constitutional Democratic Party and other opposition parties. He didn't join the coalition, as you know. He didn't get a cabinet seat. He's playing both sides of the fence, and that might work for him for a little bit, but let's see how it goes. The prime minister didn't really lambast him. He knows that he's got to work with him and other opposition parties. He knows that the LDP does not control all of the committee chairman seats, and it doesn't really dictate how things are going to go as it once did. It used to be easy for the LDP to form bills, to take questions and to pretend like, we're accommodating your issues and we might give and take here and there, but we're going to pass the bill come hell or high water. That was sometimes the stance that they made on issues of importance to the LDP. He did talk about foreign affairs, security, public safety, disaster management were key issues for him. You might remember that with the Noto Peninsula disaster, the earthquakes that happened there more than a year ago, and it's just strange. Over the last 2 weeks, there's been a huge number of earthquakes just over and over again in that same area. So one of his pet projects is to have a disaster management agency. He wants to coalesce something like that to take care of these things that happen on a regular basis in this country. You would have thought they would have something a little bit more robust in place. Typically, they use the self-defense forces for quick response and for bulldozers and that sort of thing. But he wants to make a full agency out of that. And then he also talked about political reform, which is why we're in this situation that we're in right now. It started in the Kishida administration, this slush funds, the amount of money that was being generated by different political parties. I'm sorry, not by political parties, by factions within the LDP. So it was an LDP issue primarily with Mr. Abe's faction. Former Prime Minister Mr. Abe had the largest faction there, and they were kind of, it's not skimming, they were generating money from political activities like Benkyokai, that sort of thing, and then redistributing it to some of the members who were prominent or maybe had a lot of other Diet members affiliated with them. So it was a way to kind of keep them happy, but also keep them close. And that blew up during the Kishida administration. And now we've got a new prime minister, and the LDP is no longer a majority power. It has several implications. The first being, he wasn't able to secure a meeting with President-elect Donald Trump when he was traveling 2 weeks ago. That can be attributed to several issues, but Mr. Trump did meet other leaders under various other guises. So if Mr. Trump felt it was necessary and important, I think he could have made time, but whatever that might be. He talks about, Mr. Ishiba also talked about gas tax reduction. So the gas tax reduction, there's a subsidy that will go out of effectiveness this month, and he wants to reinitiate it in January, probably for a 3 or 4 month period, to make people, appreciate that he is the prime minister and the LDP is now back in power and whatever, trying to get people to fall in love with the LDP again. He highlighted the Japan-Korea relations, particularly while he was in G20. He had meetings with President Hun, and he indicated that he is going to plan to visit South Korea before the new diet starts. That means in early January he would be doing that. This current diet session lasts for the extraordinary diet session lasts for 24 days. It will end on December 31st, 21st, and that means there's about 2 or 3, maybe 4 weeks before the constitutionally mandated diet will begin in January. So expect some action going on there. He also talked about urban revitalization. That's been one of his pet peeves. He wants to increase the amount of manufacturing and jobs and keeping people in the regional areas. The young kids are all going to the major population areas, and these regional areas are being depopulated. So he wants to really focus on re-energizing those regional areas. That's a big deal for him, and also on political reform. And he discussed while he was at the podium what kind of legislation might be required, and let me see what it was as abolishing the policy of policy activities, which is what I was just describing, where different factions, different members of the parliament would have benkyokai, policy research meetings once a month or once every 2 months, sometimes served with lunches or dinners or maybe drinks, and people would pay for that, and then that faction would collect the money and redistribute it. He also wanted to talk about a potential of a third-party audit organization that would come in and audit each of the parties and the Diet members for the funds that they've received and how they have spent those. So the Democratic Party for the People is really pushing hard. The Constitutional Democratic Party is pushing hard to even abolish this activity. Benefits the LDP more than anybody else because the LDP is the party of big government, of big corporations. It's big blue, and so they facilitate business being better at what they do, and as a consequence, big business wants the LDP to remain in power and support them with votes and with contributions that fall within the legal classification. So the prime minister has said, we're going to look at that. We're going to look at the legal classifications if they need to be reported. He didn't want to say anything about abolishing it because he's with the LDP. He doesn't want that. So there's going to be a little bit of tension going on there. The real fireworks this week will start, well, first of all, on Monday and Tuesday, there will be an opportunity in the Honkaigi, in the big diet room where the members gather, the plenary session, for the members, for the party leaders of other parties to question the prime minister. This goes on for 2 days. The upper house and the lower house, they each have an opportunity to quiz the prime minister about his policies, what he said on Friday, how he's going to do it, and they're going to criticize him, that sort of thing. That's on Monday and Tuesday. It will all be televised. It'll be very hotly watched and hotly reported in the press. Then on Thursday and Friday, there are hearings in the Budget Committee. And as you know, because we've talked about it several times here, the Budget Committee chairmanship is not within the LDP. It has been dedicated to the Constitutional Democratic Party. And so for maybe the first time in 23 years or so, the Budget Committee is chaired by an opposition party member. And they are sharpening their teeth on extracting as much information about this political slush funds scandal. So if you thought that the scandal was over with the Kishida administration and with the election of Mr. Ishiba and the LDP getting slapped down, and now it's old history. It is not old history, and the reason why it's not old history is because although many in the lower house have who participated in that and who were lambasted and were forced to pay penance or actually received some sort of a reprimand for that, maybe with regard to them it's over. But we've got the upper house elections in the summer, and the upper house is really hot on figuring out how we can diminish the LDP and raise up some of these other parties. The Constitutional Democratic Party and the Democratic Party for the People in particular are going to be hot on this issue. So the Ethics Committee for the upper house is going to hold hearings during this extraordinary diet session. They have requested the members who have received money who were members of the upper house. So the upper house Ethics Committee has some power over the upper house members. So they can call them for a questioning. Some of the people have said, well, I'm kind of not accommodating that request, but if they don't accommodate it, then it makes them look bad. About 27 of them apparently will be testifying. That's going to be a long series of testimonies, again, hotly reported because people want to know and they want to cleanse the LDP of this money in politics. It's happened before and they want to get rid of that. And the prime minister has said he's going to work on that as well. So the next briefing on Sunday is going to be replete with a lot of hot issues that have come up, and we're going to see Mr. Azami Jun as chairman of the Budget Committee, what the strategy is going to be of the Constitutional Democratic Party to kind of pinion the LDP and extract from them as much damage as they can, so that when the upper house election happens, the LDP is further diminished, the opposition parties, even collectively, is elevated, and maybe we move towards a more of a two-party or a three-party state rather than one that's dominated by the LDP. There was also talks about the Asian NATO within the LDP. This is something that the Prime Minister talked about. You might remember when there were 9 candidates for the LDP. He was one of them, and one of his policy pronouncements was, NATO is setting up an office in Tokyo, but probably the better idea is Japan to be the fulcrum for an Asian NATO. It doesn't need to involve Brussels. It's a unique set of issues. It's a unique part of the globe. It doesn't need to be dominated by Brussels or by the European North American Treaty Organization. A new NATO, something like that. And he got lambasted by the critics for that stance and for that view. So he kept quiet about it, but now it's come up. He had a meeting in the Prime Minister's office, I think on, when was it? It was on Thursday. Mr. Onodera, who is a very seasoned politician with the LDP, is the chairman of the Policy Research Council. He is chairing this discussion, and this idea of a Asian NATO, it's not new. It's been something Mr. Ishiba has been talking about for more than 20 years. The critics say this is going to provoke China, and it's going to, if you have a NATO-centered kind of strategy that involves other like-minded countries, we're kind of moving in that direction anyway, it's going to provoke China, and it's going to trigger a change of the Constitution. So you've got to do that too. One of the committees that the LDP was able to secure the chairmanship for was the Constitutional Revision Committee. And so that committee has been going on for what, 25 years or so? The politician who hired me out of Japanese law school was the chairman for that committee for a long time, more than 12 years he was the chairman of it. So very well known as a spokesman for changing the Japanese Constitution to more accurately reflect the will of the people and the reality of the current situation. That Constitution, among all constitutions in the world, it's been untouched. It's been untouched for 60 years. So the LDP is determined. It's one of the policy principles of the LDP is to change and amend the Japanese Constitution. It hasn't been done yet. And so this committee continues to go on, and with this new insight into perhaps an Asian NATO, some familiar organization like that, moving forward, you're also going to start hearing more and more of this conversation about amending the Constitution. So this is always going to be a hot topic, and we'll be talking about it, as it comes up. The other issue that came up was the Active Cybersecurity Defense Bill. It was pushed off the table in this extraordinary diet because of the political reform and because of the ceiling of the 1.03 million tax-free salaries, that kind of thing that's really pushed things off the table. They were supposed to pass the cybersecurity bill before the end of this year. The Prime Minister committed to that. It's not going to happen. But they have committed. The Prime Minister talked about pushing this bill through in the ordinary diet session, and I think that will go through. It is extremely important. On Friday, the proposal for establishing the legal systems to accommodate the Japanese government to do the things that this cybersecurity bill insists that they do to achieve any kind of objective, includes their ability to obtain and analyze electronic communications sent by foreign countries. So foreign countries coming in or sending information in, it means it's basically a blockade of information coming in, and it allows the Japanese government to capture that, all of it, analyze it, and then do something about it. So when you talk about the foreign information communications coming into Japan, it also implies that you must monitor and analyze communications from Japan going out. So it's a very broad blanket kind of surveillance that needs to be addressed. And we talked about Five Eyes. Five Eyes had their regional meeting last week, where it was held in Tokyo, the first time for it to be in a non-member location. So that's a pretty big deal. Japan desperately wants to be a part of the Five Eyes, to be able to enjoy and to participate in the kind of intelligence gathering by these five huge countries. So I think we're moving in that direction, and the cybersecurity bill is a critical component of that. It is acknowledged the increasing urgency to be given to this by the Prime Minister, and there is a lot of consternation that it wasn't able to be done in this extraordinary session. The task has been given to the Digital Minister, Mr. Taida, to come up with the bill and submit that to the Diet in the regular Diet session starting in January. We'll be reporting on that. We've been asked a couple of times, what's Japan's stance with regard to the Palestinians and Israel? And it's rather clear Japan is very close to Israel. Israel and Japan share a lot of common interests. There's a lot of technology sharing between the two countries. Israel is a very famous partner for Japan in a lot of issues. The relationships are very good. The ambassador is always a top-notch ambassador sent from Israel, and they get a lot of bandwidth here. With regard to the Palestinians, though, the Japanese have set up an organization, which is the UN Relief and Works Agency for assisting Palestinian refugees in the Middle East. This has been going on for a couple of years, and the Prime Minister just stated on Thursday, he had a meeting with the leader, or the chairman of this UN relief organization, to continue Japan's support for humanitarian relief for the Palestinians. And it's specifically related to the refugees, the refugee crisis, and the what was described as the unprecedented humanitarian crisis that's existing there. So this does not mean that I think Japan diminishes its reliance or its friendship with Israel, but with regard to dealing with the refugees, I think Japan has a big heart to help them out and to try and solve that problem. Excuse me. At the same time, Hezbollah and Israel entered into a ceasefire. I think we're probably in day 4. It's a little bit rough and tumble. It is not a complete ceasefire. There have been some violations and some actions that have been taken there, but these two issues taken together are interesting, and we'll just continue to follow what the Japanese government's stance is on that. I think the main point of today's briefing is the stance of Mr. Tamaki and the Democratic Party for the People. He is not in the coalition government with the LDP and Komeito. He is a part of the opposition, but since he did so well in this last election, the LDP is cozying up to him, and he's being somewhat accommodating, and he's doing it in a way that says, look, on those issues that are important to me and to my people and to the manifesto that I produced as a consequence of the election that I did so well at, I want to see, issues here and here being improved for my constituency. And if you accommodate me, then of course his base grows. He is rewarded in the next election, the next upper house election, where he has candidates. He has also members in his party who are upper house members. He wants to increase that. If he can increase that by, 400% as he did in this last election, pretty soon he's going to be a major force to deal with. He already is, but he's extracting a lot of concessions from the LDP, and it is making things a little bit uncomfortable, not only for the LDP, but for Komeito and also for the Constitutional Democratic Party. The Constitutional Democratic Party, Mr. Noda is saying, look, you were one of us, and now that you're kind of cozying up to them, why don't you be buddies with us? Why don't you join forces with us? We can be more powerful. And as you might remember, the Constitutional Democratic Party had a leadership change. The challenge for the party members there was, do we accommodate the LDP by joining forces with them, by distributing election districts so that we take some of theirs and they take some of ours, and we don't have as much of a controversy. We don't have to spend as much money in the elections. Do we do that? Or do we just go full barrel and we oppose them and we be the opposition party? That faction one, Mr. Noda's faction one, we are going to be against the LDP. We're going to be, even though we're a centrist, a little bit towards the left, centrist party, not that distinctly different from the LDP, but different enough to make a difference. We're going to be opposing them. And the Democratic Party for the People, you're kind of switching houses here. And, we used to be friends because we were both in the opposition party, but now you're kissing up to them and extracting benefits that we could have more fruitfully used if we worked together. So for the LDP and particularly for Komeito, they're going through this other kind of soul searching that we need to dominate the votes in the Diet in order to pass bills. If we don't, then people are going to be sick of us. There's going to be so much infighting. Bills aren't going to be passed. There's going to be a no confidence motion. We're going to be kicked out of office, or maybe the prime minister will be kicked out, or maybe there's just a closing down of the House. So there's a lot of danger there, and Mr. Tamaki is kind of playing with fire. He's being nice and accommodating to the LDP when it benefits him, and he's pushing the envelope, as I said earlier. He came up with an energy proposal this week. He presented it to the prime minister. He says, look, the ceiling for the tax-free salaries, I think we're going to make progress on. I want it to be higher. You don't want it to be as high, but the repercussions of it going higher on the national debt, basically the fault would be blamed on the LDP, not on the Democratic Party for the People. So for him to push that and get benefits as a consequence of that, the detriment is to the LDP, to the minority government, on passing the budget and losing that revenue and having all of the governors of the prefectures mad at the LDP for diminishing the amount of revenue that they receive because the ceiling was raised, or sorry, the floor was raised, diminishing the amount of revenue that these prefectures receive on a constant basis. So there is the issue that he brought up this last week was on nuclear power. So the Democratic Party for the People is hot on nuclear power. It says the policy for the government should be on reactivating the nuclear power stations. We should be going more nuclear. And that really rubs against particularly Komeito. I think there are a lot of people in the LDP that are favorable to that position, but not everybody in the opposition is liking that either. So I think at some point in time, Mr. Tamaki is going to push the lever just a little bit too far. I think he's dealing with that right now. He needs to be on good terms with both sides. He's playing the middle. This has happened in the past where the LDP has been challenged in the 60s with the creation of the Democratic Socialist Party. And also the Komeito was created in 1960, where there was a party that challenges the authority of the LDP, not like it is right now with the Constitutional Democratic Party and the Democratic Party for the People, but they're being challenged, and that challenge grows with these kind of third-party players. In 1993, you might remember the Japan New Party, and under the leadership of Mr. Furukawa, who eventually became prime minister, together with New Party Sakigake, they joined forces. They changed the election system to the single seat constituency. That's the system that we have now. That all was started there because it was deemed that the LDP was kind of playing with gerrymandering and playing with the election rules, so that they were always going to be the dominant party. They got kicked out as a consequence of that. But the problem with these kind of third party, and you're going to see a little bit of this now with Mr. Tamaki, and probably a little bit more going forward, is this for one of these third parties to emerge and to be powerful and to continue, is they have to have staying power. The huge gaps that distinguish them from the leadership or from the main government body needs to be significant enough so that the voters are always voting for them, that they're the championing the right issue. The LDP has always been successful in stealing these issues making it their own and diminishing the power of these opposition parties. So I think for these centrist parties that come up, like Komeito or Democratic Party for the People or the Socialist Party or that sort of thing, is durability. Can they stand out? And I think with the current situation, there is enough of a distinction between the Constitutional Democratic Party and the LDP on defense issues, on diplomacy, on energy policy, some basic stances on social issues as well. There is a distinguishing feature there, but the problem is, can these opposition parties be durable in promoting the interests of their constituency without the LDP stealing that thunder? So we need to continually watch not just Mr. Tamaki in the Democratic Party for the People, but also what's going on with the leadership of the Constitutional Democratic Party in promoting these issues, in scoring points so that when there is another election, they benefit from it rather than are diminished by it. And now that explains why all eyes are on the upper house election, the ethics committee meeting that will be happening over the next couple of weeks in the upper house. And finally, you might have seen this, that the Foreign Trade Council raided Amazon this week on, I think it was on Tuesday, for market dominance and anti-competitive behavior. So this is a big deal. When you get raided by the FTC in Japan, it almost brings your business to a halt. They come in with lots of investigators, unannounced. Sometimes they take documents. You're supposed to stay at your desk. You can't really do much of anything for sometimes, certainly days, but sometimes weeks. And the investigation starts. So all eyes are what's going to happen with the the Foreign Trade Commission and what they're handling with Amazon. This is a big deal. Amazon is a global player. It's very dominant here in Japan. Part of the complaint was that they force people who are selling on their site to diminish their prices. So they're using their market power to push the prices of products down. And then the other thing that was in the complaint was that they force people who are on their platform to buy or purchase other services that they might not normally want or need, but it helps increase the revenue for Amazon, unfairly utilizing their market dominance. So we're going to keep an eye on that, but that's a pretty big deal, something to watch. We'll report to you as progress is made on that. That's about it for today. I think the real meat and bones here is the Q&A session as usual. So I'll turn that over to you, Mai, so we can get started there.
Thank you, Timothy. Yes, we can get started. There are a lot of questions coming in on different platforms, in Clubhouse, on LinkedIn, also a lot of comments on YouTube as well. So, but before we dive into those questions and answers, also in the comments that we have received just now, I would like to say thank you to our other sponsor, Houze Inc. Houze offers bilingual services in custom home design, construction, and renovations. They also work in the field of commercial building construction. If you want to work with them to benefit from their customized services, please contact Hana or Howell. She is on LinkedIn. You can also find links to her profiles on LinkedIn and also her email address in the description of the YouTube video. Do not hesitate, reach out to her. And yes, Timothy, so we're moving on. I'll start with the first comments and questions that came in early this morning from the United States, from Byron. All right, the first one is a little bit long, so please listen carefully. Okay, now here we go. The Japanese public appears to be less than enthused with the CDPJ leadership that was the same one in charge of March 11, 2011. In view of the Mainichi poll showing that the Democratic Party for the People is more popular than the Constitutional Democratic Party now, is the Democratic Party for the People working on a change of leadership with the recent elevation of Diet Affairs Chief Motohisa Furukawa, an alumnus of Tokyo University, Columbia University, and the Japanese Finance Ministry. As the Democratic Party for the People deputy leader, given that Mr. Tamaki's so publicly disclosed affairs makes him unlikely to be considered as prime minister material, especially by women voters.
Oh God, that's
This
a
is a long one.
mouthful.
It is
Who
a,
asked that question? That must be Byron.
it is Byron,
Oh
yes.
my
Yeah.
God. Thank you, Byron, for the question, for all 6 of them. So there's a couple of issues that Byron talks about. One is the popularity of the Constitutional Democratic Party now, as opposed to when they initially took power. And yes, it's a different party now. It's different leadership, but it is under Mr. Noda. So I think he is seasoned. He knows what he wants to do. It's like Trump coming back for a second bite. He's not going to make the mistakes that he made the first time around. He's not going to rely on people that turned out to be unreliable. He has learned a lot, and it's been a long time since he held power the first time, and he aspires to power the second time. The popularity there, I think the comparison between his popularity and that of Mr. Tamaki is somewhat unfair. And the reason for that is because look at Mr. Tamaki. He's in the newspaper every single day. He's always talking to the press. He's just on fire. So it's not that I would say that the Japanese voters or the public is fickle, but if if your face is in the newspaper or on TV and you have an opportunity to talk, just by osmosis, your likability or this perception of your power or your fame has just increased. Mr. Noda has been relatively quiet, and he hasn't been in the fray. But I think he's not comparatively a bad leader. He's bigger than the Democratic Party for the People, and he's trying to cozy up to Mr. Tamaki. And on those issues where they can't really see eye to eye, it does cause a lot of irritation on both sides, actually. But your other question was about a change in leadership of Mr. Tamaki, and I think that issue only comes up as a consequence of this tryst that was reported just before the Diet went into session to elect the prime minister. And since he was so prominent of the people when the votes came out and the LDP lost so many, and then the Democratic Party for the People really exploded into the public eye. Look how many votes they won, and why did they win, and who is this Tamaki guy? I think that was one of the issues that really propelled him in the public eye. And so as a consequence, I think he does cut a nice figure. He's young, he's good looking, he's always got a great suit on, good dynamics there. So I think he's in a position to do make some real changes, but I think he's also walking a real tightrope in pushing that envelope just a little bit too far. I don't think that they're going to change the leadership. It would just be, he's too much front and center, and the fact that he was involved in a tryst. I mean, look at the LDP members who are caught putting money into their pocket, and they are relatively okay. I think having an extramarital affair is something that people they criticize people for, but they move on. They don't really hold that. It's not like in Italy where people clap when you do that, but I don't think it's something that's going to make him lose his seat as the leader of the party.
Right. Okay. Thank you for the answer. We move on to the second question from Byron, and it is about your view. What is your view, Timothy, about the end game in the so-called funds accounting scandal? Have we reached a stage where people are attempting to flog a dead horse?
No. I think that's a great question. I don't think we are near the end of that at all. I think with the budget committee chairmanship going to the opposition, and with the ethics committee insisting that these 27 members of the upper house testify, I think they're just opening this can of worms, and more people will be criticized, and the extent of what they were doing and how they were doing it. And the public, the political funds that are distributed to these members of the Diet, they don't have to talk about how they used it. And maybe in questioning, some of those issues will be raised and people will blurt out, or people will talk about how they used the funds or how they were forced to use the funds. And the public's ire is going to grow even greater. And this all builds up. We've got the budget that we need to pass on April 1st. So the Diet starts January, February, March. In March, you need to pass the budget. And then in March, in April, May, June, just before the election of the upper house, things will get really, really hot. And you'll see this distinction between the opposition parties, the LDP. You could even see a fracture within the Komeito with regard to the LDP. So the Komeito also has a new leader, their third leader in less than, 2 months? They had their Mr. Yamaguchi, who was their leader for 12 years, and then he retired, and then his replacement didn't win his election, so he had to give it up. And we have another leader of the Komeito, and maybe they're rethinking what their strategy is. They're actually, Komeito is decreasing in numbers. The amount of votes they were typically able to generate in every election is diminishing. So they've got to do a little bit of soul searching too. You could see a fracture there as well.
All right, thanks for that. We'll continue with LinkedIn a little bit later. Now I'm moving to Clubhouse, where we have Cam and also Ogasawara-san and Hiroko-san.
Gosh,
So
you're coming at me hard today, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, brace yourself for what is coming next, okay? Yes.
Cam.
All right, so from Cam, yes. To be honest, from Washington D.C, it is hard to see Ishiba's vision for the nation of Japan and with the United States. What key characteristics do you believe the ideal next US ambassador to Japan should possess, considering the importance of the US-Japan alliance, regional security challenges, and economic and technological collaboration in the Indo-Pacific?
Okay, thank you. So people have frequently said, hey, Langley, every time you get one of these questions, you always say, wow, that's a great question, and then you start to answer the question. They're all great questions. This is a good example too. What kind of ambassador does Japan really need at this point in time? And it's always critical who the ambassador is, particularly with Mr. Trump. We need somebody who has the ear of the president, who is close to the president, who likes him, who spends time with him. And we need an ambassador. I mean, it's not that Rahm Emanuel didn't have that relationship with Joe Biden. I don't know if he did or didn't, but the kind of ambassador that we need is somebody that's got, take a look at the great ambassadors that we've had in the past, including Bill Hagerty, who I thought was great, who left in the first Trump administration before his term was over, ran for office, and now is a U.S. senator. I think he was a really a great ambassador. You had a couple of others in the past as well. Somebody that has some Japan experience, maybe lived in Japan. Bill Hagerty did. And you don't have to start from go, and they can help the business community here, and hopefully is tight with the American business community, not necessarily the American Chamber of Commerce, but with the community at large, and is involved and engaged there. And then, just a great administrator of the U.S. Embassy here. The U.S. Embassy is almost run like a fortress over the last couple of administrations. And the ability of the diplomats and the commercial officers to engage with the public and to get out. I know they do that as a part of their job, but it's very different than it was in times past. So just a reflourishing of that relationship. I think, between the two countries, it's a close relationship. As allies, they are very close. And the key feature is the U.S. ambassador. So I'm looking forward to who the pick is going to be. I hope that's helpful, Cam. Thanks for the question.
Great. And if I may add a little bit to that, Timothy, I think that somebody who has a good understanding of not only the Japanese, but the Asian mindset, and the historical developments here, and also what people, what the countries and diplomats in this region think. An understanding of this might probably be helpful. So yes.
Sometimes the decision of who's going to be ambassador, sometimes it goes to somebody who is a political donor. So it's a bit of a reward. I'm going to make you ambassador here, and they come here and they kind of play diplomacy. They're not diplomats, professional diplomats, and so what they do is they come to Japan to kind of enhance their broader business skills, so that when they leave Japan and they leave being ambassador, they can come in and kind of swoop up all of the relationships and the businesses that they've created. And we've seen that happen time and time again. Or you have somebody who's just here because they're a famous person and they're not really a very effective ambassador. So I agree with you, Maya.
Okay, thank you for the validation. And we move on. Yes, we move on. So again, in Clubhouse from Cam. President-elect Donald Trump plans to impose tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico, and China to tackle illegal immigration and drug trafficking. He has threatened 100% tariffs on BRICS nations if they challenge the US dollar's dominance. Although Japan is not directly targeted by these proposed tariffs, how might the broader shifts in U.S. trade policy affect the Japan-U.S. economic partnership? What is your take on this?
When the president-elect was talking about tariffs, everybody got a little bit of the shivers, because it's a huge tool. Japan is an export market. It builds things for export, and so when one of their trading partners talks about tariffs, it is a very frightening prospect, because you've got to be price competitive, but you've also got to have great products on a continuing basis. So I kind of don't think that when the president-elect is talking about tariffs, he's talking about Japan. I think the relationship is too robust and too finely tuned. I think the real critical points are, if Mr. Ishiba remains as prime minister for any length of time, it's this Asian NATO, and can we change the status of forces agreement? Because he said in so many words, the United States sure gets a huge benefit out of that. They're in Okinawa and they have this global reach, and we're paying for the soldiers and we're paying for a lot of the salaries, and I don't know if that's an equal distribution. So we should have a discussion about that. I think that's the area where there might be a little bit more controversy, but I don't think it's going to be tariffs. I think the relationship between Japan and the United States is on a good keel right now. I don't think anybody's complained that the Japanese are extracting more than they deserve. The U.S. steel deal looks like it's not going to go through, but it could go through in the final hours under the Biden administration. I kind of don't think so. So there aren't any real thorny trade issues, I think, between Japan and the United States, which would compel the president-elect, or maybe the president when he becomes president, to focus too much on Japan. I think there's too much going on there. The relationship's too tight.
Okay, moving on. And then the next question, we have a couple more from Cam. Thank you,
Oh,
Cam.
gosh.
Yes. Okay, if BRICS countries move away from the US dollar, what impact might this have on Japan's yen and its role as a regional economic stabilizer?
Oh, we know it's going to be huge. If the US dollar is no longer the global currency, the United States is going to suffer in an incredible amount, and the US dollar will suffer as a result, and the Japanese yen is pegged to the value of the US dollar, as we talk about every time we open this briefing. So that would have a huge impact. I think, depending on the leadership of Russia and China on forming this BRICS coalition and moving off the oil dollar, as that builds momentum, it is a possibility that they could be successful in that. And it's not just the United States, it's not just Japan, Britain, and other allied countries will also, I mean, it would be a global crisis. And I think that's the whole reason behind it.
Mm-hmm. All right, right. Thank you for that too. The answer
You
for
can
the
see
question.
the sun coming up now, right?
Yes, and I imagine that Mount Fuji is probably right behind you.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, beautiful. Okay, thank you for that view. So moving on to the next question. Just give me a second here. Yes. Yes, Cam, thank you very much for the congratulations. And the next one. Okay. Um, okay. So the next one. How might Japan perceive its active cyber defense bill in light of Donald Trump's historical distrust of intelligence agencies and his plans to overhaul US intelligence?
That's a tough one.
Mm-hmm.
I think Japan is it's struggling just to catch up. I mean, by any mark, the Japanese are way behind, maybe 5, could be almost 10 years behind in certain areas. And their inability to kind of be secure in their own data, there are hacks and there are leaks all the time. I think they need to fix that. So any security bill legislation is a great step forward. But I think I think we can hope that what Mr. Trump is attempting to do is an improvement on what we have been having, and so maybe the Japanese can learn from that. Don't have to go through the painful process of making mistakes and eventually coming to a better conclusion. But you know, the United States has an opportunity to provide great leadership in that area. But you know, cybersecurity is such a huge emerging area of the economy. It needs to be tightened down, and I think the Japanese are well aware of that. So, you know, given the relationship between Japan and the United States, you know, there'll be collaborative efforts going forward, and hopefully the committee that was established that I talked about with Mr. Onodera and Mr. Taida's instructions to form this bill in the next Diet session, it accommodates, you know, the learnings of the United States and some of those directives as well. But you know, Japan's its own country; it's got its own ways of doing things.
Right, yes. So we have a comment here from Ogasawara-san in Clubhouse that Japan is not really serious about intelligence. It's the country's stance is really mellow. So, but it could change a little bit with data security. I think that this is obviously a historical thing because, yes, I remember my colleagues commenting that there wasn't much security in the ministries here. You know, you could walk into one division's or department's office and just be there without much security. This has changed though. So
Yeah,
when you go to, for example, when you go to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs nowadays, you cannot just walk into any of the offices there. You need permission. You need to have a pass for that. So Japan is definitely making steps in the right direction. We just don't know how it goes with the digital security, the cyber security there, because they're obviously, you know, very serious about the physical security at the moment.
yeah. It's a double-edged sword because
Mhm.
when you are super secure, it taps down openness, friendliness, ability to kind of communicate freely. It dampens, you know, creativity when you have the heavy hand of security and intelligence and oversight and analysis of data. It does tap that down, so it's a very fine line.
Right, indeed. And moving back to LinkedIn, from there we'll go back to Clubhouse. Well, we have a question on LinkedIn from Manabe-san. What is the difference in meaning between a government council of experts, a political party study group, and a bureaucrat study group?
Um, Manabe-san knows the answer. I think he's teasing me. I think he's very well aware of what's going on here. I don't know, Manabe-san. You should come up on stage and give us a bit of a fuller briefing on the policy groups and the policy research councils and what's going on within the LDP. I think just to take a stab at it, and I'm sure you know more about it than I do. I think you're just being comical. I don't know. But some of these bodies that are put together are just, they already have their instructions. We want you to find this kind of result so that when we endorse it, we have the backing of this group of experts to say, well, the reason why you shouldn't eat sugar is because the Council on Cancer says you shouldn't eat sugar, or something like that. So they need that for the endorsement purposes. In other instances, maybe it is actually a research. Let's find out what, are UFOs real? Are these things that are in the skies? What is going on there? We need to figure that out and put the intelligence, and we need to have a budget. And so they form something like that. So the government is replete, and the political parties are replete with these kinds of study groups. It also gives you an opportunity as a private company participant to engage the government there. So you would be elected, or you'd be invited to present testimony, or maybe even sit on the council. And it helps the government actually meld with the constituencies. So that's pretty cool too. If you have it on your resume that you're the president of this company and you also advise the government, that's a nice badge of honor. And for those people who are politically motivated like that, maybe not to political office, but to contributing and to participating in the political arena, like we are, like most of the people in the audience are, it's an opportunity to participate with, you probably don't get paid for it, but you do get accolades, and you get access to information that most people don't have. And you're also contributing in a social, valuable proposition. So some people have different hobbies.
All right. Well, that's an interesting conclusion, but it's very true too. All right. So, and moving back to Clubhouse, we've got Hiroku-san saying there that Ishiba, Prime Minister Ishiba, seems focused on domestic affairs.
Yeah.
I really want someone from the foreign ministry to give him some lecture on diplomatic protocols. It's crucial to build good relationships with allies and with China as well. This is a comment. I don't know whether you want to share your thoughts on this, your take on this.
No, it's a great comment. I'm sure he's had his briefings. I'm sure he was told, when you shake somebody's hand, as a gentlemanly concept, you are always told never shake somebody's hand when you're seated. If somebody's going to shake your hand, you should stand up. You always open the door for a lady. You always, walk on this side of the street if you're accompanying, other people. That you wait for the elevator and you let that kind of things, those kind of social niceties. But you have also got to understand. The prime minister, he was exhausted. He looked exhausted, and maybe it was just a slip. I don't know. He's a little bit overweight. He's not as debonair as he was in the presidential campaign with the 9 candidates. He did look dapper there. I think he lost some weight, and his hair looked a little bit more full. But it's a tough job, and so you have to give him credit there. But yeah, he's mostly a domestic politics guy. He's not known for his foreign policy chops. Mr. Kishida had that down pat. That was his forte. He turned out to be not a bad prime minister as well. But yes, the foreign component of governing Japan is so huge that it's almost imperative to have somebody who speaks English. But who's to insist on that? It's they elect their prime ministers. Maybe it is the time, like President-elect Trump, make America great. Focus on America. Why are you trying to be the policeman? Why are you trying to help people all throughout the world? Help the people that are here first and then move on. And maybe it's time for Japan to have that kind of prime minister too. We don't know yet.
Right. And we have another question, another comment actually about this in Clubhouse from Ogasawara-san, saying that Prime Minister Ishiba is focused mostly on obeying the LDP Secretary General Moriyama.
Yeah.
I think, yes, we know that there are internal powers and dynamics within the LDP, and there is, of course, always some, you call that horse trading, Timothy, right?
Right.
So, and probably there isn't much to add to this. It's a good insight. So, in addition to this, okay, we have also a link shared by Manabe-san on LinkedIn under this podcast about the report that was put together by the cybersecurity conference. So it has been published, and we're going to follow this in our future podcast as well. So please be with us, stay with us, watch us if you want to learn more about this. And in the meantime, Timothy, it
Yes.
seems, yes, I guess you already know what I'm going to say.
I'm just so
That
eager.
we're eager. Yes, I can see that. All right, and I can see Mount Fuji behind you, peeking behind you. Yes, beautiful. Yeah. All right. It seems that we have, yes, we have gone through all the comments and questions and also everything else here today on no, this is December 1st. And everybody, welcome to December.
It was a complete battleground. You hit me with, gosh, so many. Manabe-san,
And
Cam,
Hiroku-san, Cam, and also with Byron. Yes, we've
Byron.
got a lot.
Gee.
Yes. No,
So
that's wonderful. And
no, and the level of appreciation for what it is that we're doing and for the amount of focus that Japan is receiving, it's just so rewarding. Our numbers are just growing. We've got so many people, Japan hands, and people who are aspiring to learn more about Japan and what's going on here. I mean, a lot of the interest, global interest, is on China, but Japan plays such a critical role. And if that's your bailiwick, there are so few sources of information that you can rely on, and we very much appreciate and are honored that you consider us to be one of those sources. So thank you very much.
thank you for that to everybody watching us or listening to us. Also, if you are on any of the platforms we are broadcasting on, please let us know that you have been there, hit like or leave a comment. If you have questions about the podcast and what has been shared during the podcast, let us know in the comments and we'll address your questions and, well, what you share during the next podcast. So there is a little bit of time lag if you do it during the week, a couple of days, but we'll be there and we'll answer them. So thank you very much for this. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Hiroaki-san. Well, I've got only one cat and she's sleeping right now. But I appreciate it. Okay, that's all for today. And Timothy, you are free to go to sail. I know that you're eager to do that. And well, we'll see you next week again.
Can't wait. Thank you very much, Maya. Thanks for sponsoring this.
Right. And also a huge thank you to our sponsors once again, Kanagawa Chuo Jutaku or Kanchu at kanchu.com and Houze Inc. Please to work with them, connect with James at kanchu.com or Hana as well. She's got her email at kanchu.com, like Hana at kanchu.com. Thanks a lot. That's all for today. Enjoy the weekend and see you next time.